That's really fantastic. And the way that the new Stasis stuff, which they've added new aspects of fragments, of course, like, yeah, that's also, at least in PvE terms, I'm very excited to see that come along. But
yeah, Stasis is it is.
Should we talk about the Crucible?
Oh man. It's almost, I don't think I've never seen anything like it in all of Destiny. It brings you back to almost like when Sunbreakers in Taken King, except like that level of just raw power, except this isn't just a super, it's an entire. I mean, what do you think about Stasis and Crucible? I've seen a lot of talk about should Bungie, some extreme cases of should Bungie just remove it from Crucible. I think some more reasonable options would be like a playlist without Crucible, which I think, again, backseat developing here, doesn't sound, I don't want to say it doesn't sound complicated, but it seems reasonable that Bungie could maybe add a playlist where only light subclasses, lore-wise it would make sense, like a light only, no darkness in here, and they could figure out a way to fit it in the lore. But do you think, what do you think about that?
I think that I will refer to someone who is infinitely more knowledgeable about PvP, and that is True Vanguard. He basically stated, like, I do love the new season that's come out, and I love a lot of the new weapons to grind for, and that's all good, but we cannot pretend that PvP is not a bad state. Like, he says that we are in a potentially dark age of PvP, and when TV says those words, TV is not one to often use hyperbole. But when he says that, that shows how troublesome it really is. Yes, we've got new Trials armor and 2 new weapons and 1 returning weapon. Great, cool. Yes, you made gilded titles for Unbroken and, Dredgen and Flawless. Like, yeah, cool. That's all good. Yes, you addressed Shatter Dive. Yes, the Behemoth is next up on the chopping block. But we still need more of a focus on PvP because, this is the PvP community is still very much hurting, and that has been the story for the last however many months. And that's
only this season as well.
Exactly, and that's only the most recent pain because, to be brutally honest, they were hurting prior to all of this with the overzealous auto rifle buffs that meant Hardlight was utterly dominant in the meta. Like every season there has been something that hasn't been quite right, and the changes that they're making, they still feel on the PvP front like they come in too slow. And this is coming from me, where my only exposure to PvP is the background noise I get on Twitter. But it speaks almost universally of the fact that these changes aren't fast enough. The actual Crucible sandbox is terrible, even though in PvE I'd say it's fantastic. Because, you can't give one side of the thing's power, seemingly, without making that power also have to have some place in PvP, and that's a problem in and of itself. Yeah, it's a really hard place to be. Oh, and now get this: Warlocks can throw down a stationary turret that shoots stasis.
I laughed when I saw that.
And that freezes and slows, and it's like.
Is it any good? How is it? I've seen it in certain scenarios. I haven't seen it in normal. Haven't encountered it much in normal gameplay. Is it annoying? Strong? Is it?
I've heard different things from different people, but I've not heard as much of it as I think I would need to form the most balanced of opinions. What I do know is that the turret can be deployed and then will shoot alongside you, not in the same way that an arc buddy will, but very much as a stationary thing. Think of it like an acolyte's eye that shoots stasis.
Yeah, it
and the stasis, on its own, those stasis bolts that it shoots can freeze you. And that in itself is going to be enough to drive some people completely and utterly insane. It's just another way that Warlocks can immediately instantly freeze. You can do it now with a grenade charge, and you can do it with your staff. And even though they've reduced the timing on that to 1.5 seconds, which I think is actually, at least relatively speaking for Crucible, is a fair balance change. Oh my god, it is something.
When I saw that, it was just like after all the talk about Stasis, just seeing like, just plopped it. You like Stasis? Here's a Stasis turret that fires more Stasis at you. It's just hilarious. But I mean, Stasis as a whole, it's like, we even talked about this before Beyond Light came out, but it's freezing players is kind of a cardinal sin in PvP. Like, to be frozen, I'm sure Bungie, I think it's, it lends more evidence to the to the opinion that Bungie doesn't really prioritize Crucible in the way that they previously have, and they don't really care about it being a serious, competitive, balanced environment. And clearly, by them adding Stasis, it's just, before it came out, I was wondering how are they possibly gonna, in a game mode where movement is so important, to be able to just freeze someone. It's so jarring to just be stuck, to just be moving around, and then just it removes control from your player, and it's just something you don't see really ever in first-person shooter games, for good reason. But it's right. I'm surprised that I'm surprised still that Stasis is as strong as it is, and I'm surprised that it hasn't been nerfed strongly. But at the same time, it's one of the core elements of Beyond Light. So I guess I think they kind of want to make it obnoxious, and at least have people talking about it, because, you know, it makes people want to buy the expansion, buy the new content.
I definitely think they want it to be powerful. I don't know about yeah, it definitely hits the bucket list of powerful, but I think the Sandbox team is in that really rough state of having to consider both PvP and PvE. And I mean, the best example I think is the Warlock melee range. You know, on the staff, they initially had it going really far out, and then they nerfed it to quite short, and now it's somewhere in the middle, which, in all fairness, considering they also slowed down the travel time, I think is now somewhat more balanced than it used to be. I still admit that, you know, I'm not a PvP guy, so someone may come along and tell me that it's actually grossly overpowered, and if that's the case, like, I concede to their greater knowledge on that fact. But, you know, the minute you nerfed the melee range for PvP, you also did that for PvE, and I felt very kind of gimped in that sense, because it was one of these moments of, like, previously I've been able to use it to reach out as an opening part of the engagement, and then as I was doing this now with the nerf, it would just stop dead between the two of us and alert the enemies, and I'd lost all my advantage that previously I had gained. You know, like, this has real repercussions, and it's one of these moments where Bungie needs to consider very carefully what the right move is. You know, for the record, even though it's one of these things that I would be probably chastised for by people who are fellow Warlocks, I'd be very okay if everything in the Crucible, including Stasis staff, unless it's literally like a glacier grenade where you are stuck inside the crystal as it forms, I'd be okay with every single one of those being converted to a slow of varying durations. Like, you know, get hit by the Warlock staff once, you know, slow for 5 seconds. A Hunter Shuriken, which is a little easier because there's less prime time and you just throw the damn thing, it travels very fast. Maybe make that a little bit less freeze time, but, you know, I'm very okay with that being the path they go, because even if it's a slow is not as bad as a freeze. A freeze is just, you've lost that gunfight. Even if you break out and fire back, you're already at like 2 HP or dead. A slow at least gives a player a chance to react, and we've had slows in the form of smoke bombs before, so it does not feel like it's something that the Crucible would be able to completely and utterly get decimated by. That's just my take. I don't know about the take of somebody who's a true PvP sweat, but, you know, I like to think that we're all on the same page of, as far as the Crucible is concerned, Stasis is a problem. As far as the greater thing of the game is concerned, Stasis is doing really well for the sake of expanding the power fantasy of players.
It is great in PvE. It is. Stasis is amazing. It's really fun. It's satisfying. It's good. PvP, not so much. Not so much.